Hi, welcome back. Any form of research is an important task for every organization. We all know that every organization needs to continuously research their markets, their suppliers, and their customers in order to make sure that whether their strategies and action plans are on the correct path. We have heard so much about product development teams and R&D teams doing extensive research on so many aspects. Today, we will discuss that even the procurement team and the project team needs to continuously engage themselves in research. What do you mean by a procurement research? From a definition point of view, a procurement research could be a systematic gathering, recording, and analyzing of data about problems relating to the purchasing of goods and services. So, based on this definition, the respective research could be in many angles. It could be researching on certain products. It could be researching on certain markets. It could be researching on certain industries, or even it could be researching on certain suppliers. As we all know, a lot of things are changing in today's market. So, it's very important that the procurement and the project team together continuously research their market and the suppliers so that they will know and understand what are the changes that are happening in the marketplace, what are the new trends, and also who are the new suppliers who are capable and coming into the market who can be our potential suppliers in the future. Also, we need to understand that the technology and the economy is also changing at a rapid speed. So it's a duty of the procurement team and the project team to understand these changes so that they can adopt or develop their own strategies in order to be aligned with these market and technology changes. We discussed about outsourcing in our previous slides. So when an outsourcing decision is taken, there should be valuable information that the procurement and the project team has to gather from the market. They should know who are the suppliers in the market who are capable of doing an outsourcing engagement. Also, in today's world, you must have seen that e-technology has become so important in every aspect that even in procurement, we see an e-procurement trend being developed. So all these factors are out there in the market, and the procurement team and the project team has to make sure that they continuously research this entire market so that they have the valuable information within them as soon as a decision has to be taken. From day one of this subject, we have been discussing on how important a procurement function is to an organization. We discussed on how procurement can bring in value and benefits to an organization. It is understood by all organizations throughout the world today that they need to have a strong and efficient and effective procurement team within the organization. So what do you mean by efficient? It's about doing things right. What do you mean by effective? Doing the right things. So it's very clear why an organization desires to have a strong team, because as we discussed in our previous sessions that in today's business world, 70% of spend of an organization is being managed by a strong procurement function. So since the procurement function and the process is so important to an organization, most organizations will evaluate the performance of this entire procurement function. So from a definition point of view, it could be a quantitative or qualitative assessment over a given time towards the achievement of corporate and operational goals and objectives relating to procurement economics, efficiency and effectiveness. So in very simple terms, it says that a procurement function who are responsible in achieving corporate and operational goals, and they are directly linked into the P&L of the organization, so that that particular process, which is quantitative or could be qualitative, needs to be assessed continuously. There are so many ways that organizations today measure the effectiveness of the procurement team. Some organizations measure based on the savings that they bring into the organization. Some organizations, they might measure based on the time that they take in order to complete an entire procurement cycle. But there are few difficulties that some organizations face when measuring the performance. Example, when you say efficiency, how can you really define the efficiency? It could be in so many ways. So there's no one defined way in today's world that you can measure efficiency. So how companies measure this efficiency could be different to organization. And also, the procurement team is a support team to the entire organization. So sometimes there could be a lack of formal objectives in the entire platform for the procurement team. And the biggest challenge would be how the procurement function has been defined is different from organization to organization. So the best approach would be that the senior management, the project teams, and the leadership of the procurement function has to sit together. They need to review the respective objectives that needs to be met, and based on that, they will have to come up with certain measurements that they can measure, and based on those performance, the top management can take further decisions. Procurement audits is another important factor in the entire landscape. All of us, I'm pretty sure that we have faced audits. So what do you mean by procurement audits? From a definition point of view, we can say it's a comprehensive, systematic, independent, and a periodic examination of a company's procurement environment, objectives, and tactics to identify problems and opportunities and facilitate the development of appropriate action plans. So, in summary, every procurement division, function, process, and the related suppliers will be audited on a frequent basis. As we all know, and we have discussed, how we need to continuously improve the performance of the procurement function, the process, as well as the supply. So, frequently there should be assessments to make sure and to identify that the process which is being placed is correct, it's doing its duty, and if there are any gaps, those need to be identified and corrective and preventive actions needs to be taken. So it starts from the procurement team to the process, to the selected suppliers, to the engaged project, and well as the outcome. Let us now look into few examples on what will be audited in an organization in relation to procurement. So it will audit what are the principal purchasers in the respective organizations that contributes to the higher spend. Those should be identified properly. And then for those respective projects and purchasers, who are the principal suppliers? And have those suppliers been selected through a correct process? Have we looked into the risk factor and made sure that we have taken the correct supplier, looking the entire landscape? How and what will be the criteria that the suppliers will be appraised? What will be the value that the organization will get in return to the money that has been invested? What are the policies within the organization, and are all stakeholders are adhering to these policies? So these are few points that usually that will be audited in a procurement landscape, and it's always good to have this audit so that any gaps will be identified, any mal processes will be identified, and these gaps could be bridged through a focused team who will be doing their actions in order to make sure these gaps are bridged. Benchmarking is another important activity that a procurement function and the project team will get involved. What do you mean by benchmarking? Benchmarking simply is comparing the performance of a certain division or a project against an outside or an internal party to make sure that the respective project or the procurement is performing as per the expectation. So this would be applicable to the supplier as well, because when you benchmark, your supplier will also get evaluated, and then if there are any gaps, those could be bridged. So there are 4 types of benchmarking that we can see in the business world. Those are internal benchmarking, functional benchmarking, competitive benchmarking, and then strategic benchmarking. When you talk about internal benchmarking, it's about comparing a performance of a project or a procurement or a unit against something similar within the organization, or something that could have been happened in the past, a similar project, I would say. So the respective procurement team and the project team can compare the current performance against the similar internal project or the procurement, or else they can use something which has happened in the past to make sure that their current performance is up to expectation and make sure that the desired results will be achieved. When you move into functional benchmarking, which is much more broader compared to internal benchmarking, here the performance of a respective project, procurement, or a division will be compared against a similar function outside in the marketplace, irrespective of the industry. So meaning, if you are working for a telecommunication organization, and if you are doing a project or a procurement or that particular function, that will be compared with a similar function in the outside market and will not be restricted to telecom. It could be beverages, it could be manufacturing. So compared to internal benchmarking, the functional benchmarking would give a real indicator on how they are performing. The third type would be competitive benchmarking. In this situation, the respective procurement process or the division will be compared against on how the similar function will be operating in one of your competitive organizations. For an example, if you are working for a telecommunication organization, a particular division, their performance will be benchmarked to a similar division within your competitor, who is another telecom operator in the market. The last type would be strategic benchmarking, which is very important. It is a method for evaluating alternatives, implementing strategies, and improving performance by understanding and adopting successful organizations who may be competitors or partners. So it doesn't have any restrictions. It goes all beyond your barriers, and it compares with your suppliers, with your partners, with your competitors, and with all functions. And it sees whether the strategies that you are implementing is the best in class compared to the marketplace. Procurement is a sensitive area, and every person who gets involved in a procurement engagement needs to understand that they need to be transparent and should be following the process and the framework that has been set in this respective organization. The procurement function, or the people who are involved in this procurement, are dealing with all people across the organization, irrespective of their grades. Because every user division will have their respective requirements, and the procurement team will get involved along with the project team and with some people from the user division in order to fulfill this requirement. So in this entire engagement, they will be the interface to the outer world when trying to source in products and services through respective suppliers. And we also know the suppliers also are a set of key stakeholders of an organization. They have a certain interest in this organization. So the procurement function needs to manage this entire engagement in a proper manner. So during a procurement, there needs to be certain rules and regulations, processes that everyone has to follow. In general, there are a few procurement ethics that every person who are involved in a procurement needs to adhere to. Few of them would be, when a procurement function is involved in a procurement, that particular procurement will be a concern for the well-being of others. So simply meaning, when the procurement team along with the project team gets involved in a procurement to source something for one of their respective user divisions, they need to make sure that they get the correct product and the service and the supplier. If not, it will impact the user division, and then when it impacts the user division, it might have a direct impact on the top management and subsequently to the end customers. So there are few authorities when you are working in an industry. So the procurement function should respect these authorities and the rules and regulations that has been laid down by them. Every person who are involved in procurement should be very honest and should be trustworthy. And that's why they have been selected for the particular procurement. There will be certain laws in the country and by the regulators. So the respective procurement function needs to comply to all these laws and regulations. There should be basic justice when they are involved in a procurement. Example would be being fair to all suppliers, treating all suppliers equally. And they should make sure to refuse to take unfair advantage of a procurement scenario, because there could be so many malpractices that could happen during a procurement. And in order to make sure that the ethics are followed 100%, all the people who are involved in the procurement should make sure that there would be no unfair advantage internally or externally. And one of the main important criteria would be they should have that perception of preventing any harm to any stakeholder within a procurement engagement. So in summary, anyone who is involved in a procurement needs to make sure and understand that there are few procurement ethics that everyone needs to follow, which are very important, and they need to make sure to follow them so that there will be no impact on the product, service, or the supplier that we are trying to source, and there will be no negative impact on the image and the brand name of the organization.